I'm an addict called Beverly.
Hey,
Hey, and I thank God for Narcotics Anonymous.
your timer. Your little timer.
You got a time this? Okay. My techies right here. Cape Atlantic area. I am so grateful to be here. So a lot of y'all know that, this has been my area for a long time. And 3 years ago, I moved to South Carolina. And I flew up last night. Like Barbara said, this was not the plan. I came up to get my spirit filled, to see everybody. And then, of course, we got the call from Danny, and everything was hooked up. Here we are. But, it's just so good to be back. It's so good to be back. And I go back to when in early recovery, whenever I used to do a lot of conventions, and whenever there was a relationships meeting, in early recovery that was, I couldn't wait to get there to hear all the drama, right? There was always so much drama in the relationship meetings. In early recovery, that's, I was hungry for that. I didn't have any recovery yet, And that's not what this is about. I've learned that Narcotics Anonymous is all about love. And I have experienced so much love since I got here today, right? But living clean is all about relationships. It's all about relationships in every area of our life. It's about learning how to foster new relationships. And, when I grew up, I didn't know anything about relationships. I had a mother and father that I knew loved me. It was understood. But I remember as a young teenager sharing something with my mom, and 30 minutes later listening to her repeat it all to a friend on the phone. And from that moment on, I shut down. And I did not, like my mom and I struggled with the relationship for years, until I grew up, right? Until I grew up and got into recovery. And then the whole situation changed. I was able to show up for my mom. I remember when I moved back to Ocean City, I just drew an absolute blank. So anyway, I was in recovery in Burlington, and when I moved back to Ocean City, my mom had my son for almost 3 years. So my son moves back in with me, and I go to my mom and I said, okay, let's go to the county so I can get custody back of my son. And she goes, oh, I don't think so. And I was like, why? And she said, every night you're going to a meeting. So you say, I don't know that you're going to a meeting. So she was not ready to give me custody back. And I remember calling my sponsor and saying, I'm taking my son, I'm getting the fuck out of Dodge. And she goes, really? Where do you think you're going? She said, how about just letting your mom see that you're in the recovery process? Now give her some time to see what you're doing. She said, you go to a meeting every night. She has no idea where you're going, right? So I took the suggestion, and about 6 months later, she came to me and said, okay, let's go to the county and do the paperwork, I am so grateful for sponsorship, When I first got clean, I went to a rehab, and then I went to a halfway house for 15 weeks. And I had to, one of the house mothers at this halfway house, I wanted her to be my sponsor, but she couldn't because she worked there, right? So I picked her girlfriend. And unbeknownst to me, her girlfriend changed my life. She just, she had gone through the same halfway house years prior. She had kids that her mom kept. I mean, like our stories were so similar. My first sponsor was black, she was gay, and she was from the streets of Newark, New Jersey. I'm white, I'm straight, and I'm from middle-class America. And we were so, I mean, we used to cry doing step work because, you know, she taught me that we were more alike than we were different. This woman began to teach me about life, you know, and I didn't get clean until I was 43. Yeah, 43. And I began to grow up in the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous, you know. For years, I was just totally self-centered, and I was an absolute mess when I came in. When I came in, I weighed 85 pounds. I was missing half my teeth. My hair was long and straggly, and I was a wreck. And at least 3 or 4 times a week, my sponsor would say, "Girl, you are shut the fuck out." And I was. I mean, some of the things that I would say, some of the things I would do, I was a mess. But thank God I kept coming back, right? I went to a meeting every day for the first 3 years of my recovery. But the most important relationship that I had at that time was my sponsor. You know what I mean? I mean, some funny stories, but so when I got out of the halfway house, I had 6 months clean. I met a guy who had 6 months clean. We moved in together. Within 30 days, I was shooting dope. Thank God I had a sponsor, even though I didn't use her at the time. And I remember calling her and saying, "Marion, get me the hell out of this house." And she picked me up and took me to the noon meeting in Burlington, and I sat on the front row. I was bruised up and down my arms. I was a wreck, and I had to raise my hand with 24 hours or less, and I was scared to death. I had no idea where I was going to go. 2 women took me in. I didn't know anything. I didn't grow up with gay people at all. There were no gay people where I grew up, right? But 2 women took me in and allowed me to sleep on their couch and wouldn't take a dime from me. And so the one woman decided to leave and left the other girl there by herself. And she needed a roommate, so here we are. I got a roommate with a gay woman. I remember one day calling my sponsor and saying, "Yvonne and I are going to be in a relationship." And she goes, "What?" She goes, "Beverly, you're not gay." And I said, "I'm telling you, we're going to give this a shot." This is how crazy I was in early recovery. Because, you know, I don't know what I was thinking at the time. And I remember we were sitting on the couch watching a movie, and the minute she put her hand on my leg, I went, "Oh my God." You know, I just started to get all nervous and stuff. And so Yvonne ended up in the hospital, right? And I wanted out. Like, I wanted to leave, I wanted to run. And I remember calling my sponsor and saying, "I want to do a bag of dope so bad right now I can taste it." She goes, "Why?" And I said, "Because I'm not gay." And I have to tell her. I have to tell her. And I picked her up from the hospital. We stopped at the diner, and I said, I got to talk to you. She said, "Okay." I said, "Yvonne, I'm not gay." And she said, "I know." It was like, oh my God. But this is how insane and crazy I was in early recovery. And I have to tell you that we remained friends after that. You know, we really did. And she ended up living with me years later, and that's a whole nother meeting. But I'm not gay. But just again, learning how to be in a relationship with people. Not when I moved back to Ocean City, like I spent 3 years in the Burlington area. I went to a meeting every day for the first 3 years of my recovery. I needed the repetition. And when I got out of the halfway house, I had run into Dutch at a speaker jam. And he was like, this is, on the weekends, I do conventions all over the place. You can come have tape. And so every weekend, I'm at a convention somewhere. He's like, Bev, it'll be perfect. It'll broaden your base. And I must say, I'm grateful for that because I did a lot of conventions, a lot of speakers jams, a lot of women's raps, like up in North Jersey, and met a lot of people. And then I got tired of doing it. You know what I mean? And I remember, and he was a good friend. You know what I mean? There was nothing behind other than him wanting to help me because we knew each other before he got clean. But anyway, I remember I had made a commitment to do a women's rap in Newark, me and another girl from Philly. And I was just tired of running every weekend and doing this. And so every day I would be like, I got to call him and tell him I'm not going to go. Fear, right? Fear that he's not going to like me, whatever. Every day. And then finally, like Friday, I said, Dutch, I can't go tomorrow. And he goes, okay. I'm like, all week I was a mess, trying to get up the courage to be honest, right? And I thought, I want to be like that someday. Like, not be judgmental when somebody does something that I don't like. You know what I mean? It just taught me something. You know what I mean? I remember going to a convention in North Jersey years ago. And a girl, Shelly A. from Baltimore, was sharing. And she was screaming from the podium. What's the sense of being saved from the horrors of active addiction if you're not reaching back your hand to grab the guy behind you? I can still hear her voice in my ears. That has stuck with me all these years. You know what I mean? And when I got clean in the Burlington area, I remember my friend Bert, God rest his soul, said to me, you'll notice that a lot of women don't stay. Now, this was 29 years ago. He said they don't always leave and use, but they'll get married, have kids, get families, get busy, and stop coming. And I made a commitment back then. I don't even think I had months clean. But I made a commitment not to be a woman that leaves and doesn't show up to help other people, right? I mean, there were people there to help me when I got here. Barbara and I talk about it all the time. It's why we're still here. Yes, trust me, I still need to come to meetings. I'm not recovered by any means, but it's to help the next guy, right? It's to reach your hand back and grab the next guy. When Barbara and I used to go to the jail, and you see these women with attitudes, and you just want to shake them and say, look, it works. If it can work for me, it can work for anybody. You know what I mean? It's so hard to watch people just throw it away. Recovery works, man. But to go back to relationships, so, when I was in Burlington, my mom kept my son. And he would call me crying, when are you coming home? My mom would, at the time, didn't understand what I was doing fully. And she would say to him, your mom doesn't want to come back. She doesn't want to leave her friends. And I would be upset, but I learned to understand that she didn't understand what I was doing, and I had to keep talking to him. And my sponsor taught me how to send him cards. Every week I would send him little cards. She goes, don't write him a 10-page letter. He's 9. You know what I mean? But send him little cards, thinking of you. We'll be together soon, and all this stuff. And the day came. The day came when my mom called and said, your brother is moving out from upstairs. The apartment is available. If you're ready to come back, I'll rent the upstairs apartment to you. And I panicked. I was, oh my God. Like, I wanted to go back to Ocean City. I wanted to be a mother to my son, but I mean, my whole world was recovery. You know, I went to a meeting every day. I lived next door to my sponsor at this point. But I had to have some faith. I had to have some faith and realize that recovery happens in the Cape Atlantic area, right? And I moved back. I moved back. And so then I had to begin to build relationships here. So my first area was the Burlington area, and then I began to build relationships here. And I remember my sponsor at the time said, I think you should find a sponsor from Cape Atlantic area. And I was like, absolutely not. I mean, she knew me better than I knew me. I did a 4-step with her. You know what I mean? She really knew me. But she stopped coming to NA. She hasn't used, and we still talk today, but she stopped. And I needed a sponsor who was still participating in Narcotics Anonymous. And so I started just going to a lot of different meetings and listening. And I remember going to an H&I subcommittee meeting one day. And there was a woman there. She had 18 years clean at the time. And she was involved with narcotics, you know, with H&I. And that was an attraction to me. She had, to me, at the time, I think I had 3 years clean and 3.5. And she had 18 years and was still involved in service. So she's still my sponsor today, and she has 42 years clean, right? The relationship I have with my sponsor today is totally different than I had with my first sponsor. It's not bad at all, you know? I mean, the first sponsor, we became friends. I mean, we did stuff together. We really became close friends. But my sponsor today, she continues to guide me through the steps and the traditions. But she does know what's going on in my life, the good, bad, and ugly. And doesn't judge me and always listens. And I try to do the same. You know, I try to do the same. It's not always easy. There are times when, you know, I learned in sponsorship, like I have some really tight relationships with some women I sponsor. But I also learned that you can't sponsor everybody exactly the same. I can't expect everybody to do everything I do. I'm still single. I have a little bit, I have more time than somebody who is married and has kids and has a full-time job. You know what I mean? I can still make a whole lot of meetings. But there still are things that you have to do, whether you have the time or not. You have to make time for your recovery. It's just been interesting because, again, I'm growing up still in the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous. I went to a meeting last week, and somebody was sharing about how their sponsor had told them to put acceptance over expectations, and they had it on their refrigerator, and I thought, wow, I like that. And I went home and typed up a thing and said acceptance over expectations and put it on my refrigerator. You know what I mean? It's just, I'm still learning. I still hear things in meetings that teach me, right? I love Narcotics Anonymous. You know, funny because I'm old enough to retire. I'm 73 years old, right? I'll be 74 in a couple months. And because of Narcotics Anonymous, I became a really good employee, you know, and my company doesn't want me to retire. So they're allowing me to work from South Carolina. And last year, because the company I worked for merged, I flew up here once a month for sales meetings and what have you. It's getting old. I'm getting tired of flying back and forth every month for work. I want to be able to come up and see everybody and do stuff, right? And y'all are welcome to come to South Carolina and visit, right? But it's just getting old. I'm older. And schlepping through the airports is not as easy as it used to be for me. You know what I mean? So, you know, I have some decisions to make, you know. At least once a week I think it's time to retire. And then the other 4 days I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm good. I don't want to give up the paycheck, right? I still get a nice paycheck and I'm getting Social Security and it's comfortable. And then I get caught up in the fear that I'm not going to have enough to retire and be comfortable. Like just for the day I can do what I feel like doing. I could fly back and forth if I want. If I retire, it's going to change a little bit, right? Although my financial guy has assured me, he's like, if you lose your job tomorrow, you'll be fine. I still have that fear. I'm not going to have enough. You know what I mean? That's us, right? I'm not going to have enough. But I just have to keep practicing faith, you know. And for the last year or so, I've really been living in my 11th step. You know, I'm so grateful for the step process. I really am, because I've done nothing but Narcotics Anonymous for 29 years, and I'm starting to reach out and explore some other things to enhance my relationship, right, with the God of my understanding, and it's been good. It's. I just feel like I'm headed in a different direction, you know? Don't get me wrong, no way I can leave Narcotics Anonymous. Because I've come to understand that the more I come to meetings, the more I need to come to meetings. I really do. You know, life isn't perfect, you know? I still get caught up in stuff and, you know, there's no question I'm an addict in every area of my life. I mean, I've been caught up on some games on my phone that my granddaughter downloaded. And that was never my thing. You know what I mean? I've always been a big reader. Then my 8-year-old granddaughter downloads a couple games on my phone, and I'm there till 12, 1 o'clock in the morning on my phone. Yep. So the solution is to delete the game, but I haven't done it yet. I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. But, you know, it's just, I don't know. It's just, living clean is all about relationships. I have some wonderful relationships today. You know, between the women I sponsor, my sponsor, you know, I talked about the struggles with my mom. So what happened was I lived on the second floor. My mom lived on the first floor in Ocean City. And for about almost 5 years, I took care of my mom like that. And when she couldn't really get around as much, I would come down every morning at 7 o'clock, get her breakfast, get her dressed. She'd be set for the day. I would go to work. She'd eat her dinner at 5, and then she would let me get her in bed early so I could have the rest of the night. And I did that for almost 5 years. And there were times when I would come into a meeting and have to talk about how hard it was, right? And some people would come up to me afterwards and say, you should be grateful that you still have your mom. And I'm like, if I don't talk about how hard it is, then I'll be mistreating my mother. And I don't want to do that. I needed to talk about my struggles, right? And my mom and I became really close, you know. And she began to fall. And she would hit the lifeline, and they would call me in the middle of the night and have to get down and get her up until I couldn't lift her anymore. And the last time we ended up in the emergency room, she looked at me and she goes, you know, I think I should go to a nursing home right from here. And she floored me because I was struggling with that decision. I didn't want to have to make that decision, and she made it for me. She took that pressure off of me, right? And she ended up in the nursing home for, I don't know exactly how many years, 4 or 5 years. And she passed last October. And I'm grateful for the people in my life that helped me through all that helped me with my mom. I mean, people that because when I moved to South Carolina, that was a struggle. One day she just said to me, you know, I'd really be okay if you decide to move with where the kids are. Again, she took that decision off of my plate. And so I moved, and every time I came up, I would go see my mom, right? But people in recovery went and visited my mom for me. I'm just grateful. I couldn't name or talk about all the situations in recovery where people helped me and showed up for me. It just it blows my mind. It really blows my mind. Again, I'm grateful for Narcotics Anonymous. I mean, look, I can't say that I've never thought of using. I've had thoughts of using from time. There's been times when I'll think to myself, God, if I could just do a bag of dope, I could clean this whole house real fast, right? And then I think, where did that come from, right? I just don't act on it, right? Thoughts come, you know what I mean? I'm an addict, and those thoughts come every now and then. I just don't act on it. I can play the tape all the way through. I know where I came from. And can you imagine me copping in Camden at 74 years old? Yeah, that would be kind of tough. But anyway, I just want to say, you know, I'm just grateful for Narcotics Anonymous. I thank everybody just for being a part of my life. You know what I mean? And Barb, I love you. That's all I have to share.